Hi, Beatrice. We will start right now with you. So,
Okay.
among the panelists, we also have today Dr. Helena, besides Dr. Rosa, and Dr. Mariana, who's going to be a speaker today. And also we have Dr. Amar Fetil. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it correct. So maybe you can put your video on, please. And for the most respected guest speaker for the day today, we have two presentations. One by Dr. Beatrice Ferreira, the second by Dr. Marian Muir from Switzerland, and Dr. Beatrice from Brazil. The most respected guest speakers, Dr. Beatrice, Dr. Marian Muir, Dr. Rosa, Dr. Pascoway, Dr. Helena, Dr. Claudia, Dr. Amar, all my dear PE teachers, a warm welcome to the PE and community coaching for women teachers. We are honored and blessed to have two eminent speakers with us who's going to take sessions. And I take this opportunity to introduce Madam Beatrice. Madam Maria Beatrice Rocha Ferreira is a PhD in anthropology at the University of Texas, Austin, UT at the Department of Anthropology, USA, and a master's in physical education, faculty of physical at the University of Sao Paulo, USP, Brazil. Developed a career as professor and researcher in the faculty of physical education at the State University of Campinas, UNICAM. Visiting professor at the University of Leuven in Belgium, University of Center Western in Tirana, Unicentro, Federal University of Grand Uranus in Mato Grosso do Sul, and visiting researcher at the Laboratory of Advanced Studies in Journalism. Ma'am's current positions are, since 2007, Ma'am has developed research at the NGIME nucleus of the Research Group on Inclusion Movement and Distance Learning at the Federal University of UST Florida, board member of the NGO Comori Indigenism, Environmental Action, Culture and Education, Campinas, Vice President of Pascoway, member of the Development Committee of Bixby, main topics of research and publications related with society, culture, emphasizing social diversity, figurational process, power changes, especially in Indigenous communities. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Hello India, Ministry of Women and Child Development, National College of Physical Education, a warm welcome to our dignified speaker, Madam Beatrice Ferreira. Welcome you, ma'am. I also welcome Dr. Rosa D'Amico, Dr. Helena, Dr. Marian Muir, who will be taking up the session following this, and Dr. Amar to this particular session. A warm welcome to each one. I also like to welcome all my dear teachers, because I've been telling every time I'm so impressed by our energetic, enthusiastic women teachers. Nearly now we have 5,600 teachers who have joined with us. A warm welcome to each one of you. I know this session is going to be very interesting, very informative, and you have two women leaders who are going to take the session. Over to you, Madam Beatrice Ferreira, for your session, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
ഇത് 6000 പേരുള്ള സൂമാണ്.
Madam's presentation. Madam's professor.
Okay, can you see now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm very glad to be here and to share this important moment with so many women. And we have also Amar, and then we have a man too to attend our section and to be part of the physical education and community coaching program for women teachers. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm going to speak about women, but focus on indigenous women. And I'm going to talk about the concept of the games, indigenous games, diversity, indigenous games, major social change in Brazil that the voice of women could raise stronger, some indigenous politics for indigenous, social change, the intertribal committee of memory indigenous science that is organizing the kind of the Olympic Games for them, and then the games itself. Okay, I'm going to just to show a video that now in these 2 weeks it's happening. NGO, the CSW, the Commission State of Women, and I can see many of the women from India participate and showing the very good programs that they have there. I'm just showing general video to see how important is the women in nowadays. Okay. No. Okay, well, something happened, John. Okay, now we're going to focus more on the games and the meaning of the games, what the games mean. The games play a role in the development of planning, strategy, and judgment. The hominids played because they were already able to use their imaginations, create social representation, and give meaning to things. There are many sociologists that say that the games are so important that the society is like a game, it's a big game, and it's the way that we deal with the world. But when you think about games, it falls within the scope of pleasure, sensibility, and emotions. That's very important to understand that all the games has to have some kind of pleasure, sensibility, and emotion. And there is a professor in Belgium. He used the word ludodiversity. Ludodiverse means there's a variation among all culture and encompassing the domain of play, contest, physical culture, and moment expression. You can see in all the world, in every place that you go, the children, the young people are playing. They're using different kinds of games. In India, I know that you have a very good program in traditional games and to give values of the local people. Okay, and this professor, the Hein Ransom, he understands the games, and but he sees all the context, or he calls human body, human movement. And then you see on the top of the diagram, he calls the homo agonisms. It's related with competitions, physical contacts. If you see on the left part, he calls physical culture is related to homo exercisings. On the bottom one is homo exhibis, is performance, acrobatic and dance. On the right one is the ludo homo ludens, what the game and plays are. And then he put the sport, and sport has all of these characteristics: homo agonisms, homo exercise, homo exhibens, homo ludens. But here we are going to speak only mainly on play and games, okay? And then when you think about the games, where are the women in this historical process? I see that, how they show up. They couldn't show up the way that men were years ago in the sport. They couldn't show up in the physical exercise. In some games, they were not allowed, but now they are. And you can see all the important women. And then you can see on the left one is from, I'm sure that you know, it is a model. She's raising a voice to help different women, this needy Sunil, and she's doing a very good job. And yesterday in that conference, on the United Nations conference, she had a very good presentation about the program that she's doing for women in India. Okay, going back to the meaning of the indigenous games. Games are playful characters and then represent the myth and cultural values. See, it has to be something about culture. They bring together the material and immaterial world of each group, and they require specific learning, strategy, luck, and the way they are. And they don't play every day. If you go to an Indian community, they are not using this kind of clothes anymore. But for the representation, for big parties, yes, for big celebrations, and then they use necktie. Otherwise, they just have normal clothes. That's important to think. And they also, the meaning of the games, they prepare the youngest for a very important role in their tribe, in their community. And then it helps the socializations, corporations, and also the preparation for warriors, especially for men. That's something more for men. The women are not prepared for warriors. It's more for family, and they have this kind of characteristics. But it changed a lot. It changed. I'm going to show how they changed. And also, it's important to realize that the games, they take place in some times, and then they follow some rules, and then they are established in different ways, but also there is no age limit for players. Sometimes you can see old men, old women playing, and then with the children, with the young, depends of the games, all of them can participate. That's something very, very interesting. But some of them are more for young people, yes, like fight. Fight is more for young people. And also it's this kind of games, they are load of meaning, but they promote experience, incorporate only not for the person but for the whole group. The whole group, they celebrate together. It's something that belongs to the community. Okay, and how the games are transmitted. Okay, now you can see that many of them are in the internet, yes. But in general, the old men, they have the memory of these games. And this memory, many times, they were forgot because of the colonization. They didn't want to accept because they were in the rituals. And then the religions, the Christians didn't want to accept the Indians' religions. So many of the games were forbidden, but they were still in the memory of the old people. And now they are bringing back, and they are allowed to play again. Some of them are just forgotten. Okay, but when there is no man, there is an old woman, then they can transmit all the games and the history and the community. The power goes to the women. And in general, they share nowadays. But many times, yeah, many times they die earlier, and then who is the responsible is the woman. The woman has all the power. Okay, when you think about Brazil, you see it's a very large country, but because of, since the Portuguese arrived in 1500, so many things happened. And then they had a lot of disease, a lot of wars, a lot of this, and now we have only less than 0.5% of the populations. It's very small populations, but they have rights, they have human rights. It's not comes only from Brazil, but it's in the world. The minorities, they have human rights. And then you can see now they still have language, 275 ethnic groups, indigenous lands, okay? But in the whole history, since the beginning, they were not, in the beginning, they were considered transitory subject, means that you want them to integrate in the civilization, in society. They were not recognized their own culture. There are so many different cultures there, and they didn't want the government, the colonization process, didn't want to recognize them. And then you had the two main organizations, the SPA, the Indigenous Protect Service. It was from 1910 to 1967, and now you have the FUNAI, the National Indigenous Foundation. But especially the first one, they want them to integrate. That was the idea. Okay, but the world changed. It's a good news. In the sense that the space mobility, they start traveling, the communication comes and goes, and the movement against the force, the culture, and against the interference of government, indigenous society, yes, it was something very important in different sectors of society, in the world too. The United Nations, UNESCO, and other international organizations for the human rights, they help them. And also some very important groups, the International Indigenous Movement in Canada, United States, New Zealand, and others, other countries that are organized, and in Brazil. And you see only, since the whole period, they were not considered citizen. They were not considered legal person. I mean, they were there, they had protection from the state, but they have different laws. But only after 1988, with the new constitution, they were considered citizen and the legal person. And then they were recognized organization, custom, language, beliefs, traditions. And see, that's something that changed a lot. And then they are changing based on the constitution. It's not easy in the sense when you change the law, it doesn't go straight. People change their mind. No, there is a struggle. They start struggling for this. But, it's important that they have these two brothers, Carlos Justino Terena and Marcos Terena. They were invited to be part of the ECO 92. It was an international organization in Rio de Janeiro. And then at that time, they founded the Intertribal Committee of Memory and Indigenous Science in 1990. And after that, they start organizing a very important indigenous game. See, it's important to have these national ones, although in the community they were playing and they were having all the games, but it's important to have a national one. And then they had this dream to bring the games and the rituals from the indigenous lands to the city to show that, okay, we exist, we are here, we have voice, and the women have voice too. And you see that these indigenous peoples games, what they call, it's organized by them, or the community intertribe, the ITC, that was organized by Marcos and Carlos Terena, and the Minister of Sport, because sure, they need the financial support, especially from the Minister of Sport, and then the Minister of Justice, Secretary of Sports, and municipality, all of them together, and also civil society, university, NGOs, media. See, that was the configuration of these games. Okay, but if you go there, it's interesting because it coexists with the scientific knowledge and bureaucracy. When you get money from the government, see, you have a lot of bureaucracy they have to follow. And at the same time, they have some organizations that they had to adapt to come to the city. And also the traditional knowledge that they want to bring to show if there is this adaptation. And then the question is, where is the women's participation in the games? The games, many of them belong only for men. And okay, the first one was the game, this important game was in 1996. It was in Goiânia. And then we had all these years until 2013. And in Palmas in 2015, it happened the first World Indigenous Games. We had different countries going there and to participate in the games. And what's important is they have a different motto. The motto is the important thing is not to win, but to celebrate. The celebration, that's something important to understand. It's more important to win. Sure, that nobody likes to lose, but the part of winning is something very important. Okay, when you see the games, and then when you go there, you have the opening to show all the groups that are there. In general, many times we have 1,000 or 1,000 more people. And then the arena where they have the main games, except the swimming, that they go to different place. And there is a handicraft fair where they bring from their lanes to show and also to sell. It's very important to sell the handicrafts. The social forum, that's something very new even for us, because they have like a conference, but they don't separate. They have the conference and also the games. No. And then they debate about education, human rights, food security. Every time they have different subjects to discuss. And that's something very, very good, because one way for them to celebrate. And then they have a special place for them to sleep. They have the dormitory. And in general, they build some kind of oca, we call a special place for them, just to similar to their own lands. And after, in the evening, they have a big party. It's not open for the public, but that's the way for them to talk and celebration. They have a different way of having fun and knowing to each other. It's a very special place. And the food, also the food is very good, but at the same time, they have to adapt to the different needs from them. Some of them that come from Amazon, they drink water only with honey. They don't eat meat. Others, yeah, they eat meat. And see, they have to separate. And also the logistics of displacement. Some of them is not very easy, because some of them come from the jungle. They have to get a boat, and from the boat, airplane to go to the place. And the other ones go by bus because they are nearby. Some of them are in the south, and see, the size of Brazil is something very big, and it's not very easy. Okay, when we think of the women, what's the role of the women? As I said, the women, many of the games were not allowed for them in the past, but now the games, these events, they start showing that some of the communities, some of the ethnic groups could play. They were allowed, and some of them were not allowed, and then start changing the way of they are allowed, and then they start changing, and then sometimes they can play. And in the beginning, they came the first games in 1996. They came only to watch and accompany husband in the games. See, they were not playing. The mothers always bring the small children with them. They never leave the children behind. When they're small, they come. That's a problem, because they get sick. They are not used with the environment there. It's a big problem. But yes, that's the way that they are, belongs to their culture. The dancing, the rituals, yes, they were allowed, and they would come. And the handicrafts to sell during the games, and then the social forum. That's something that happened. We interview different women in different places, and then you can see how the communities were different. The first one, Pataxó in Bahia, they say, well, women didn't play football in the old days, but now they do. They are allowed to. The games in Caigangue is in the south of Brazil. The games have contributed to valorization of traditional sports that were being left aside, such as archery, body, and painting. And some of them can do this. And in my village, football is often played. We have played football since we were little. That's a Maori. And there is another one that's something interesting that they said that the father, in general, when the woman get married, many times the husband does not want them to go to a social place like games and these big events. But this one, she was very good, and the father was responsible for everything. And then he invite her all the times to go to the games, and the husband had to accept. That's something very, 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 that was from Canajá. You see the power sometimes, the family, and the power changes. Okay, and if you see, the games are in the process of resignification. Why? Because at old times they were only in their local communities, but now they are not anymore. You can see even these presentations. That is, if you go to the videos, you can see a lot of different videos showing the games, but still they permit myth, cultural values, and congregate the symbolic world of different ethnics. When you see there are the log running, you can see, but the meaning is different if you go to another group, another community. Every practice has a symbolic meaning. And the women are allowed to play some games that were forbidden in the past. See, that's the way that they raise their voice and that they are be able to do this. Even when you go to the football, the athletes are present in the organization of teams and matches. What means that the way they organize their teams, the way they celebrate, the way their songs, the way that nowadays, when you organize a team, you get the best one. And for them, no, the family is very important, the extended family. And then the coach, the person who is in charge, they invited only if you are very good. But if you belong to the family, if you belong to some area of good connection, yes, you are invited. But the way that when they lose, or when after the matches, when they lose or when they win, they have different way of celebrating. Okay, when you see the participation in public life in games and sports, that's something very important for them, extremely important. They build new social roles that in the past, yes, they didn't have this, being sportists, that even the name didn't belong to their culture. And then they rethink and affirm their rights in indigenous and national societies. That's them saying, okay, I'm here, I exist, I have voice. If we see all the activities they are doing, if you see the log run, women and men can do this, but for women, the log weighs 60 kilos, and for men, 100 kilos. That is only for men, these arrows and bow and arrows, because relate more with hunting. And strange rope, that's something that it does not belong only for the indigenous people, yeah, but they do this, the women and men. The canoe is more men, borrow and arrow, or more men, arrow 5 meters more men, but the fighting and variations, women and men can do this. And some stick games that are related to hunting, You can see that everything related with hunting and fishing is more with men. And the football, women, men, latex ball, men, Zarabatana is also related with hunting. And then the running, yes, women and men. You can see that we can do all of this. And that's what they call log running. It's weighing 60 kilos. It's heavy. Many of them cannot do this, but yes, they do this. And women can become more visible through their handicrafts, dance and games and sports, especially soccer, to rename themselves and to build a new identities. The indigenous men and women are in the process of empowerment, self-determination to national and international levels. And okay, what I do, you can see, well, but then the game happens every year, every 2 years. And what happened in their community and the development of these whole games, it was so important that they start doing in the communities, they start celebrating, they brought back all the old games they are doing. That's very important because many of them were very sedentarian. They were not having any kind of exercise unless they had to hunt. But the women, no, they were there just being raising children, collecting, doing very small movement. And now the games brought back, and then they can do in different areas. And we had, as I said, important in 2015, the International World Games that happened in Brazil. And then in 2017, it happened in Canada. I don't know if you have time. Otherwise, Dr. Usha can show you later the videos. That's very interesting. You can have the whole idea about the games and also a soccer game that happened in Canada. And the
I shall share the videos later.
Okay.
Later, I will definitely share it with them.
Okay, she'll share later. And what happened now, we can see the importance of the game and sport is something that was very important in their lives. And but with them, seeing them can we call the COVID and the sedentarism and the obesity of them, that what we call syndemic, it affects their health a lot. With the climate change, the food security, sedentarism, alcoholism and drugs, especially for men, women almost don't have alcoholism, and the ecosystem of innovation, sustainability and resilience, and public policy and social conscience that, all of them are passing the same situation that we are, and that these people, they are suffering more because they don't have very good hospital nearby. They don't have, it's not very easy. And well, finally, I want to say that we're going to have a very good and important international congress in China that organized by IAPESC, the International Association of Physical Education, Girls and Women. And it's going to be online, we call hybrid, but you can, the deadline for abstract is going to be April 1st. And I hope you all can participate and then raise your voice there. It's going to be about women sports. And I hope all of them can do this. Okay, well, namaste, thank you. And Dr. Usha will show later the videos, and they are very interesting.
Thank you so much for this informative talk. मैं आप सबको बोलना चाह रही थी कि मैडम ने बहुत अच्छा आदिवासियों के बारे में उनका खेल, क्योंकि मैडम एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट रह चुकी है, और आप देखेंगे एक एक एक्टिविटी में वो जो बड़े जो लॉग बोलते हैं, बड़े जो लकड़ी नहीं बोलते, क्या बोलते हैं, बड़ा जो पेड़ रहता है वो 60 किलो वाला, ये सब इनका जो कॉम्पिटिशन कैसा इनका अंतरराष्ट्रीय लेवल पे भी है. मैंने बहुत ज्यादा काम किया है. मैम, थैंक यू सो मच for this wonderful session you've given us. I'm sorry, you're only giving less time. Over to our next speaker, we have with us Dr. Marian Mia, working in the area of sport and development for more than 18 years, with a focus on diversity, human rights, empowerment, sustainability, and monitoring and evaluation. Thereby, she studies and promotes social change, equity in sport, around sport and through sport. Ma'am is currently working as a researcher, lecturer, and consultant for the Interdisciplinary Center for Gender Studies at the University of Bender with mandates in Kenya, Togo, Switzerland. In addition, she is teaching at the Swiss and German universities. Ma'am also PhD in sport pedagogics, published a thesis on sporting role models in sub-Saharan Africa. Originally, she obtained a double major in history, political science, studying in Fribourg and Bern, Switzerland, North Carolina, USA, Siena, Italy, and Munich, Germany. Her research and training approach is inclusive, trans, interdisciplinary, as well as participatory. Ma'am is focusing on mixed methods for data collection, multimodal didactics for capacity building. Madam has a broad international network comprising academia, civil society organizations, governmental institutions, sports federations, corporates, media. Illustrated by a few examples for the Swiss government, Ma'am elaborated a security concept for 2018 UFA Euro in Switzerland and Austria. In a previous position at Swiss Academy for Development, she was in charge of major monitoring and evaluation project involving the International Football for Hope network in collaboration with Street Football World and FIFA. Ma'am measured progress in terms of health and well-being, education, children's rights, anti-discrimination, social inclusion, conflict resolution, peace building. On behalf of the Technical University of Munich, Dr. Marian coordinated an European Union project on sport and physical activity, psychosocial interventions in cooperation with IXP, Danish Red Cross, and SAD. Mandated by UNESCO and IXP, she was one of the 3 experts working with the Ministry for Youth and Sport, as well as a pedagogical university in Madagascar to evaluate the implementation of standards on physical education of quality on ground. Recently, she led the campaign Children Win on mega sporting events and children rights at Charity Homes International Federation. Ma'am is currently the board member of ASCOBE and also Association of Respect and Association of Swiss Sport History, Advisory Council member of Women Win, SAD Associate, reviewer of several journals. Indeed, ma'am, we are honored and blessed to have such an eminent personality with us, with a multi-phase personality, and especially with the your session last time in terms of the sustainable goals was really amazing. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Government of India, Ministry of Women and Child Development, lectured by the National College of Physical Education, a warm welcome to again our renowned speaker, Dr. Marian Mia, ma'am. Ma'am, over to you for the session, please.
Thank you very much for these kind words and introduction, Dr. Usha. And it's a true honor and privilege to being able to speak to you today from little Switzerland. And I'm going to talk on sustainability and empowerment through sport and physical activity. Let's see if oops, it doesn't go forward. Let's see. Now, yeah. So I'm going to talk about sustainability in general, and then basically the empowerment as a concept, to go through that, what it means in, around, and through sport. And then to show or to highlight catalysts of empowerment, which are sporting role model, which all of you basically are. So first of all, in terms of sustainability, it goes back to this famous Brundtland report, named after a Norwegian politician who wrote this important paper, Our Common Future. And there it's basically the definition of sustainability that is valid until today. It's basically that sustainability is understood that to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that basically, if you cut trees today to make sure to put seeds in the soil, that future generation will have trees and wood, etc. As well. So that's basically the essence behind this. In terms of sustainability, the UN, the Agenda 2030, they have developed these 17 SDGs, the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. And they're very, very well known, and that all basically governments committed until 2030 to contribute to these goals. So before they were the Millennium Development Goals, and now they moved on to the sustainable. And you can see, for example, to clean my glasses, I have them as on a little on a little sheet as well, or they like it's important to promote them in as many ways as possible that people really see how we can contribute. And what I would like to show now is how sport and physical activity can contribute to this sustainable development goals. In a minute. In terms of sustainability, it's important to mention that these SDGs here, we have 17, and they are divided in 169 targets. So it's cut down in targets, and that sustainability is only reached if basically nature, so the ecologic aspect, society, the social aspect, and the economic aspects are met at the same time. So if something goes really well in terms of economy and the nature is suffering, it's not sustainable. If something is going well in terms of nature and economy, but the people are suffering, it's not going well either. So it needs to be at the same time, like all these three elements. And this is what's the tricky thing about sustainability. And otherwise, it's not sustainable. In terms of sustainability, there are different degrees. And in terms of right now, with the climate change and this whole discussion, there is the tendency to have a kind of a hierarchy, to say it's not all on the same level, but if nature doesn't work, if we do not have fresh air to breathe, if we do not have clean water to drink, economy doesn't matter really, just to put it a bit bluntly. So in this second model, there is basically a hierarchy of nature, then society, and then economy. But of course, these models are, it's highly political as well. But just to keep in mind that these three aspects need to be met in order to talk about sustainability. Now, sustainability in sport. It's very important to mention that the UN Agenda 2030 in the declaration, there is the paragraph 37, where sport is explicitly mentioned as a contribution to sustainable development and sustainability. It's defined that it's an important enabler, so of sustainable development. And it's said that it's recognizing the growing contribution of sport to the realization of development and peace in its promotion of tolerance and respect, and the contribution it makes to the empowerment of women and young people, individuals and communities, as well as to health, education, and social inclusion objectives. This is very important. It's not just a feeling that we think that sport can contribute, but it's actually written in the Agenda 2030 that sport is an important enabler. And I think we can always also refer to that when it comes down of cutting down maybe funds for PE or physical activity or etc., to say it is officially recognized as an important enabler of sustainable development by the UN. So here I highlighted 7 out of this SDGs, 7 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, to which sport can make a contribution. So this would be health, number 3, education, number 4, gender equality, then number 8, decent work and economic growth, number 11, sustainable cities and communities, thinking about parks, about infrastructures, about equipment in a city, lighting, soil that need to be prepared. Then number 16, peace and justice. There's also in terms of violence reduction, peace and reconciliation processes, and partnership for the goals. So basically, these are the 7 SDGs to which sport and physical activity can make a direct contribution. As an example, in sport and peace building, I was involved in a project in Sri Lanka. This was in Bandaragama, south of Colombo, where there was a project after the tsunami, where we worked together with coaches from the Muslim community, from the Sinhalese community, and the Tamil communities. So we worked with all 3 ethnic groups basically at the same time, and children were invited, and they could see that the collaboration took place between the coaches and as well as a role model, and that interaction was fostered. So this is basically peace building through sport as an option here, the example from Sri Lanka. In terms of sport and gender, this is from BAM, from Iran, an example, girls playing football. In terms of sport and gender, so here are listed again the 7 SDGs to which sport-based approaches can make really a contribution. And I would like to mention gender equality. Equality, it's a big term. It's used over and over again. And I would like to stress the difference between equality and equity, because in my opinion, equality is not enough. It's not enough. Even though the SDG, as you can see on the top, talks only about gender equality. Equality means access and control to resources, like giving the same to everyone. And in terms of basics, access to education, health services, voting rights, what we all consider very normal of getting. So equal to everybody. Equity, gender equity means basically it refers to fairness. It's basing on the needs, to say what is the need of a person, and it can differ between maybe men and women, girls and boys, and then looking at these needs. In this example here, I think it illustrates best what the difference between equality and equity. So equality is everybody gets the same box. We don't consider the size of the body, because the guy in the yellow pants, he doesn't need basically this box. And the little guy, he would need 2 boxes. So focusing on the needs, this means that we check how tall is someone, where is the problem? The problem is body size, like the size of the body to see the game, the baseball game in this case. So fairness, equity would be to assure that everyone is able to see, to participate. So in this case, it's not equality, everyone gets 1 box, but fairness means everybody gets what he or she needs to participate. And this is what is so important, that gender equality, same rights, access to resources, etc., plus gender equity are both needed. This is very important. And just one more word in terms of gender. Gender goes beyond a binary system. It's beyond just pink and blue. So we have this example of intersex athletes, for example, that we need to think out of the box, that gender is not, they're not just 2 genders, but gender to be thought as a continuum, that many, like the variety of human beings is much broader than just 2 basically genders, just that we keep that in mind. Now, talking about empowerment in, around, and through sport. Of what areas are we talking about when we talk about empowerment through sport? So we talk about sport and inclusion, sport and trauma, for example, after a tsunami, sport and peace building, violence prevention, health, environmental issues, human rights, gender equity, education, etc., etc. It's just to show what elements that we talk about if we talk about sport as a tool for empowerment. Sport and health, here the example from Casablanca, where there is this women's race, 10 kilometers through the streets of Casablanca in Morocco once a year. And it's more than 25,000 participants every year that taking place. The first race in '92 had to be conducted under police protection because men were throwing stones at women who were running. So you can see here also the involvement and this kind of claiming public space. It's a very important element. Sport and social inclusion, in this case from Malawi, where there are HIV positive children playing together with healthy children. So this is the aspect of social inclusion. And now premises of empowerment, which is very important. First of all, to have this holistic view. Empowerment is not only about women and men, about female empowerment. Empowerment is whoever is neglected or disadvantaged for whatever reason. In terms of diversity, it can be a marginalized group, it can be indigenous people, as Beatrice has shown before. It's not limited to women. So it can be people with disability, etc. So empowerment is the whole range. Everyone who is neglected or disadvantaged can be empowered or has the potential to grow into that. Then empowerment, this is the tricky thing about it. It's at the same time an ongoing process. So we work on empowerment every day in terms of, for example, self-confidence. I work on self-confidence every day. You never can tick the box, I'm self-confident 100%. I think we all, so this is something. And it's at the same time a goal to say, we want to improve self-confidence, which is a goal, and in terms of empowerment. So this is sometimes what the concept makes it a bit difficult. Then it's very important, empowerment is resource-oriented. You do not look what people cannot do, what are what are people lacking? Oh, you can't do this, but you check what are people able to do, starting there, which is very motivating, and then improving from there. So this means everyone can grow from where he or she is, starting there, which is motivating, and not to say, oh, this is, you can't do that, you are not able to do that. So it's this resource orientation, not the deficit, but the resource that is the focus of the starting point. From there, every person, every human being can make progress. This is very important. Then the fourth point, empowerment. You cannot empower someone else. The empowerment is in the person, it's already there. It's in a human being, the ability to empower himself or herself is already there. What we can do through sport, to education, to programs is to foster empowerment, to pave the way for empowerment, to enhance empowerment. But the self-determination, if we empower someone else, it's like a contradiction in itself. Because if I say I empower you, I'm putting myself over another person, and this is the contradiction of empowerment, because it needs to come from within the person, and we need to enable that person can grow. For example, self-esteem, self-efficacy by, in sport, for example, having exercises that people can have, for example, success moments, and then grow self-confidence through that. And then the last point, it's that in terms of the level of empowerment, I'm going to show the next slide, which explains that more in terms of the level. So we have empowerment within. This is the micro level. This is the personal, for example, self-efficacy, self-confidence. This is increasing my personal empowerment. Then on a meta level, this is maybe the collective level. It's access to infrastructure, access to maybe committees to decide on budgets, access to voting rights, access to water, access to sport pitches, access to sport equipment, for example. That is on this level. And then on a macro level, it's really the existence of social structures, of hierarchy in the community. So, for example, in terms of gender, what does it mean? Like masculinity, femininity, what does this mean? Does this mean being weak and strong? So this is something that is in a more societal level. Also, maybe what do media show, what pictures are in the school books, etc. And as you can see here, these levels can be changed. Like the orange sector, like personal, it's on a short term. You can also measure it more easily. On a meta level is midterm, like to change committees, to change boards, to get access to infrastructure. And the green level is long term. You need 8 to 10 years to change a mindset, maybe in a community or in a society at least. Okay, so in terms of empowerment and sport, I'm going to focus on 3 areas. Empowerment in sport, which means more the safeguarding aspects, around sport, which is more around sporting events or mega sporting events in my example, and true sport, that's the focus. So basically, whatever you take as a framework, the basic framework is always the human rights framework about human dignity is like the highest. I think that it's whatever we do, that's the highest standard. And then to consider every time the socio-cultural context. Are we in the countryside? Are we in a community, in a region that is religiously strongly influenced? Is it more conservative? Is it more open? Is it a mixed culture, etc.? This is very important to consider each time. So if we take one sport and we put it in different socio-cultural contexts, if we take volleyball, on the left is a tournament in Switzerland, where you can see a lot of skin, a lot of, the infrastructure, very high level, a lot of publicity. And on the right is from a tournament from Kenya. And there is from a remote area, a Muslim group coming to participate in this volleyball tournament. And it was agreed by the community, by the elderly people, by the what body parts can be shown and what dress is appropriate for them to be able to play. So we have the same sport in different socio-cultural contexts, which has totally different consequences. So if we take these three areas, the in sport, the true sport, and the round sport, I'm going to go into the in sport. Here we are talking more about ethics, access to infrastructure, but also medical care and safeguarding, of course. And this is on an international level. These are publicly available, these two publications by UNICEF about protecting children from violence in sport, and also the International Safeguard for Children in Sport, which have very good checklists as well. So this is one area in terms of empowerment in sport. Then empowerment around sport. This is more if we have events and the whole aspect in terms around sporting events. For example, you have, if you have a big event, you have big opportunities like the Olympic Games or a World Cup to say infrastructure, housing, education, healthcare. There will be things that will be built, etc. But we also have police violence potentially, that street children are put in jail, as happened in South Africa, because of the tourists, that they do not see the poverty in the streets, child labor in terms of sport equipment, forced eviction and displacement, as it took place in Brazil before the World Cup. As well, and the Olympic Games, and also sexual exploitation topics, so that we look at both sides of the coins in terms of mega sporting event and around mega sporting events. Now the true sport, that's the focus of what I would like to mention today. The true sport is really about human development, about life skills, violence prevention, health promotion, peace building, etc. True sport. Now, what's the context and the precondition for this empowerment through sport? First of all, sport needs to be mentioned in a very broad way. And here I also include indigenous games, like Beatrice mentioned before, martial arts, gymnastic, traditional games, as sport needs to be thought as broadly as possible in terms of physical activity, not in a narrow way, but in a very broad way. That's the first very important aspect. Then we all know competencies and positive effects of sport. So physiological fitness, the cardiovascular system, muscular strength. Emotional, I learn how to win, how to lose, how to cope with aggression maybe in a game. Social, solidarity, fairness, teamwork, etc., and cognitive, about tactics, discipline, concentration. So these are all competencies that can be improved and through sport, or built through sport and physical activity. But we all know when we have positive effects, the other side, we also have risks, negative effects in terms of injuries. If people do not know how to do sports properly, they forget maybe the warm up, or in terms of unsecure material on the pitches. Also in terms of maybe child trafficking, prostitution, in terms of bigger events of elite sport as well, but also racism or sexual abuse, etc. All these things also come with sport and physical activity, or may come. And the very important thing here, my message is that sport is a tool or instrument. Sport itself, it's not positive or negative. It's like a hammer. It's like, if you think sport as a tool with a hammer, you can build really good things. You can help people, you can construct, etc. But with the same hammer, you can destroy, you can kill someone with a hammer. So the point is, sport as a tool or instrument itself, it's neutral. It's all about the way it is used and set up. It's all about how it is set up, how is it thought, what's the mindset behind. and itself it's neutral, and it's upon us basically, and the people who do the sport activities to make it safe, to have positive effects or negative effects. And then, yeah, it cannot be just forgotten, but for sure minimized. In terms of sport and socio-cultural context, so the orange frame.
Dr. Will, could I just say this, ma'am, एक message था कि खेल जो है वो हथौड़ा जैसा है, वो हम एक साधन के तौर पर इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। अगर उसको जहाँ सही तरह इस्तेमाल किया तो उसका फायदा होता है, लेकिन अगर आपने किसी गलत तरीके से कहीं मारा तो उसका नुकसान हो सकता है। तो हमें खेल एक हथौड़े की तरह से लगे, लेकिन उसको किस तरह से उसको उस साधन को प्रयोग में लाना है वो भी हमारे ऊपर है। इसलिए मैडम अपना मैसेज इस तरह से दे रही थी। Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you. No problem. What is important here, besides the socio-cultural context, which always need to be considered, even from one village to another, from one region to another, from one state to another, it can be different. It needs to be considered. It's not only one country to another. That sport, in terms of diversity, so we look at, for example, people with HIV/AIDS, the education level of a person, maybe the sexual orientation, gender, religion, etc. So this is diversity. We are not just women. We are more than that. We have a certain education level, a certain status, etc. And we all need to consider the full package of that, working with people. That some people might be maybe with a disability, maybe mental disability, maybe physical disability, or maybe physical disability but very well educated, etc. So these are all the things that we need to keep in mind in terms of diversity, not just male and female. This is much this is not enough, yeah, to be considered. And this intersectional approach needs thoughtful consideration. Now, 5 preconditions basically for the empowerment through sport so that it really works. First of all, it's the involvement, the ownership, the inclusion of everybody from the beginning. It's not that you prepare something and then it's already set up and then people need to adapt. But if they can join in the planning, what sport do we do, which pitch, and maybe building the pitch together. So this ownership, if this is increased, it will be sustainable in a long run. But if you just do something for someone else, it's basically what I said before in terms of empowerment, in terms of the resource orientation, it's a missed opportunity if we do not involve people from the beginning. This is very important. Then the second one, what I said about the instrument, pedagogical reasoning. It's not just sport and then the miracle happens. So we need a pedagogical reasoning, a setup, a didactical reasoning behind to put the message across. It will not just happen by coincidence. It needs this thoughtful thought behind to guarantee the transfer from sport basically into real life. Then point 3 is this multi-perspective versus performance focus. Many people think sport is just about performance, just about success. And excellence and performance, they are important, of course. Beatrice mentioned it too. People like to win, of course. But it's more than that. Some people, the motivation might be to do something for health reasons, or just experience an adventure, or the suspense to say, oh, I like it if a game gets really tied in the end. I really like this suspense of how it goes on. Or I just want to be with the community. I want to feel this sense of belonging. This is my motivation to do sport. And all these human motives of doing sports are equally important. It's not that excellence and performance is more important. And if you conduct your sport that all these motivational aspects are on the same level important, you will be able to include more people because it's not only about excellence and performance. And the fourth point is also a point that is important if we have scarce infrastructure. And this is often the case. We do not have the perfect infrastructure, the perfect equipment, that on one side is the disciplines and codes to say, playing volleyball, we need this net, this ball, or playing basketball, we need exactly that. Playing football or soccer, playing cricket, we need this and this equipment. If we do not have it, it's not like wrong or we cannot do it. So the point is, if we think more of movement concepts, not of strict games, of catching and throwing, of things like running or making up games together with the participants, that most of them can join. But because if you have, for example, football 11 against 11, and you have 50 people who want to play, it doesn't make sense to play 11-11. So to make up something else, maybe a game with 6 goals and with different or little sticks, or just that for movement concepts, that we go away from the disciplines and codes, because often the infrastructure is lacking to do it properly. So in terms of letting people participate, it's better to focus on these movement concepts, and maybe a sport without equipment, depending on the context. And the number 5, the premises of empowerment, I've already presented to you these aspects that are very important. Now, the last point in terms of catalysts of empowerment, in terms of sporting role models. So I have already shown you this concept of empowerment, and we have basically this top-down approach at the same time as this bottom-up approach. So we need both. We need the top-down, we need the famous people, we need the athletes, the top athletes, we need the politicians, we need the UN, we need the big FIFAs and UEFAs, the big sport federations. These would be the top down. So in terms of the sport federations, the clubs, the biggest for table tennis federation, Olympic Committee, but also sponsors like Nike, Adidas, etc. And also the ministries. So the Sport Authority of India, Japanese Sport Agency, etc., and also the UN, which unfortunately the Office for Sport and for Development and Peace, they shut it down lately, which is a pity. But this would be the top down. But it's also the bottom up that is needed. We need people from the ground. We need active people in the streets that do as a voluntary work, daily work at schools, in communities, etc., with children, with young people, with disadvantaged people, etc. So the bottom up could be NGOs like in India, the Magic Bus project, or around the world, there are many examples of NGOs using sport as a tool for development and sustainability. So who are the catalysts of empowerment? If we now personify it, are these the famous people? Are these the community coaches? In this case here in Zambia, this is the priest. The priest was coaching the women's football team. He did an excellent job. So he was a very important person, and because he was the coach of the football team, the female football team was accepted because he was a very respected person in the community. And in this term, he was a role model too. Or the teachers at the community school, that after the school took place, they were doing PE with children. Or the mothers and sisters and aunts and cousins in Casablanca, they are also role models. They go out, they do 10Ks running every year, once a year. Or are we talking about peer-to-peer role models? So in this project here in Malawi, these are the girls between 12 and 13, and they do this peer-to-peer. The captains of the team tell messages to the other teammates. So this is also in terms of getting people of the same age, motivating other people. And just after this, in terms of teenage pregnancy, after this project was introduced at the school, the teenage pregnancy, which was between 30 and 40% at the school, dropped to 3 to 4% after the sport was introduced, after the school activity. So after the school, there was often this break of 2 or 3 hours where children were just hanging around, and now they did the sport activity, and this rate was reduced, which is quite impressive. So what role models are we talking about? The famous ones, the community ones. So in this whole role model discussion, there is a lot of, some call it role models, superstars, celebrity, mentorship, etc. And I try to order it a bit, and it's about the degree of interaction. So basically, the degree of interaction, if the interaction between an observer, the target group, and the role model is intensive, is the more intensive it is, the more influence the role model has on the observer. So this is basically like daily interaction with parents, with mothers, with maybe teachers, coaches, etc., has more influence than interaction with famous people, which are not even, which are just one-way interaction, because with a famous person, usually you don't get answers or feedback. So there is the high and the low interaction. If we take it now very specifically, we have like three groups: the mentors, the role models, and the heroes. So this would be high degree of interaction, medium degree, and low degree of interaction, or no interaction, like with even Superman, which is even fictional, etc. So in terms of sporting, so type 1 would be cousins, brothers, caregivers, etc. Type 2 would be teachers, staff, peer leaders, etc. And type 3 would be the famous ones, the famous people like Pelé or Dute Chand, Navratilova, etc. And here it's important, like from the research, it's clear that type 1 has the most influence. So we go not deeper into type 1 because this is clear that this is the biggest influence that we have. But as we look into sport, we look at type 2 and type 3. This is more interesting now for us. So the basic between that, the theory is from Bandura, the model observer similarity. It says that the more similarity between a model and an observer, the more likely it is that the behavior gets imitated. So if we have a famous person, we say, well, maybe it's someone has a dark skin, and then it's a white-skinned person doing a sport that is not relevant. This is then also the point that it's not similar enough. And based on that is the theory attainability versus relevance. So it's built on Bandura. It says that if a person is relevant and attainable, the more likely it is that that this behavior is emulated and imitated. So if someone does a sport, let's say ice skating, and I'm not an ice skater, this person can be brilliant, but I will not, it's not relevant to me. Because if I'm a football player, it's more relevant to me to have another football player as role model. And the attainability is like if someone is from the United States and you know, gets talent, I think, well, that's from the United States. But if it's someone from my neighbor village, this is attainable. I could go there and you know, meet her or meet him. And this means that if it's relevant and attainable, that's where it's getting important. So if we take that all together, what we have seen so far, we have the sporting role models, the three types. We have the empowerment levels. And now what's in between? How can the role models take influence in terms of empowerment through sport? So what's this question mark? And this question mark is basically pedagogy or coaching. So this saying, life skills are taught, not caught. So it's not just happening by coincidence, but as teachers, as PE teachers, as coaches, it's important to have the present mindset. So to really, we want to bring something across. Then it's intentional teaching. It's not just we do something, we let them play and whatever happens, happens. No, we want something, we want a message to be put across. And then the transfer, it's that something from sport can get into real life. Like for example, if you know how to handle pressure and you learn it in sport, maybe you do better at schools when you have an exam because you know the skills, you learned it from sport. Or to handle aggression at home if there's getting, I don't know, difficult situation with the parents and you know how to temper your aggression. And this is what's the idea, this transfer, the skills from the sport area from physical education into real life. And this is basically the missing piece between then sporting role models and the ability of empowerment. This is this missing piece that I wanted to point out to you. Important is that coaches and teachers, meaning you are agents of change. You are the so-called transmission mechanisms, because youth development happens through meaningful, reciprocal relationship with parents, friends, peers, and adult mentors. So whatever you give in, it needs to be reciprocal, will come out. So this is really key, the position of teachers and coaches. So this would be the type number 2, the influence of the type number 2. Because like this, in some cases, some participants see the coaches and the teachers more often than the parents. So if we take the continuum, all circumstances will be able to be considered, which is very important. Just to close, an example from Zambia, there is Esther Piri. She was brought up as an orphan. She was the victim of a rape at age 11. She was getting pregnant, and then she came into a program with her baby, etc. She learned how to box. She was discovered as one of the best boxers from Zambia. Today she's world champion, and you can see I took the picture in the streets of Lusaka, in the capital of Zambia, like pride of the nation. She's making now a publicity of the national crop in Shima. And if she says, stay away from drugs, if she says protect yourself when you're having sexual relationships, if she says, it's another message, because she is one from them. She is one, she started from the scratch. She was in a very unfortunate situation. And as a role model, she's very, very powerful, because she didn't have an easy start, but she made it. And she's one from them. She's relevant and she's attainable. And I've never seen, I did research in Zambia as well, I've never seen men naming a woman as a famous sport role model than in Zambia. And there were men mentioning Esther Piri, asking who is your favorite sporting role model. They mentioned Esther Piri, which says a lot about this power. But also community coaches have a lot of power. And to summarize,
Dr. Marian, I just show that picture because the image which you showed, maybe you could just show me that slide where you showed the image of the picture, the previous one, please.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
मैम ये बता रही थी कि आप ये जो पिक्चर देख रहे हैं यहाँ पर, इसका नाम है एस्तर फिरी, ये ज़ाम्बिया की है। इसे बहुत मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ा। 11 साल की उम्र में इसको रेप किया गया। इसको बहुत मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ा और काफी चीजें नहीं मिल रही थी, लेकिन इसने अपनी बॉक्सिंग से शुरुआत की और बाद में आप देखेंगे ये वर्ल्ड चैंपियन बनी है। और मैडम ये कहती है कि आप देखेंगे हर जगह जो क्रॉप्स है वहां का, उसपे इसका नाम ये एम्बेसडर करके आए हैं। और जो पुरुष लोग हैं वो भी इनको काफी मानते हैं। बच्चे सब बोलते हैं हमारे रोल मॉडल ये है। तो अब देखिए किस तरह से एक बदलाव खेल के जगत से उसको कहाँ से कहाँ पहुंचाया और कहाँ पर ये, इसलिए बोलते हैं जीवन कौशल है ये जो हम बोलते हैं खेल, जीवन कौशल के तौर पे मैडम इसके बारे में समझा रहे थे। यस मैम, थैंक यू मैम।
Thank you. Thank you for this explanation. So I want to stress on one side a famous person like Esther Piri, but also the community coaches, like the everyday coaches, that the value they have. And just to summarize the whole what I just said. So if you have no or low interaction, maybe that's with a famous person that you don't know. So it's important that they need to be authentic. They need to mean what they say. If they say stay away from smoking and you see them on pictures smoking, it's not credible. So they need to be authentic, consistent, the actions and the messages, and to be very proactive, to be very outspoken about what they want and what they need, because they have an influence as famous people. If they say things, if they say, in terms of human dignity, if they make clear statements also in ethical principles, it has an awareness. And to be aware that they are role models all the time, even if they don't want to be one. So this is the no and low interaction. Now with the higher interaction, now we are talking about teachers, coaches, community coaches, etc., they need to be as well authentic, proactive, etc. So this needs to be met in a cumulative way. But in addition, it's important that we have also incentives and perspectives for coaches, because often they do it in a volunteer way, and they do it they don't get money or just a little money for it. So they need to get incentives, which could be sometimes a shirt saying staff or coach, or good equipment, or something visible that helps them to improve the status maybe in a community. And makes it more serious, not just the coach, but to say, well, that's a coach, it's a well-equipped person, is a well-trained person, she has something to say, she has competences, etc., which is often then with these incentives, it's better. And perspectives for coaches maybe to enable them through capacity building to maybe improve himself or herself. So this is an incentive. Then supervision, self-reflection, is also ongoing training, that we do not train them once and then that's it, but that we constantly adapt. Now, for example, with COVID, to make another capacity building to inform how can we handle sport, for example, with this new situation. And also self-reflection or supervision, because sometimes if children often they come and they share the problems, personal problems, it's also something hard as to take. We want them to share the problems, but at the end of the day, we are not psychologists. So also to take care of these coaches in terms of supervising them, giving assistance, mentorship, etc. Commitment over time, we want them to stay as long as possible in the positions, because if children open up and they trust them, and then if they go away after a few months, it's really this lack of commitment that is a pity in these in these circumstances. And then the resource orientation, to see what do we have, what resources do these coaches and these people bring, and starting from them to see what do they need in order to do better, in order to feel better, and to stay longer again over time. And of course, the last point, the mindset, intention, and transfer, as I said, to have the right mindset, not to be there because I have to be there, but because I want to be there, because I want to make a difference. I have the intention that what I teach is so relevant that the young people or whoever you're teaching take something from the sport pitch into real life. And these, for the higher interaction, these need to be met basically cumulatively as sporting role models. Namaste. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You said it's gracias, mercy. I don't know. Anyway, that's great. It was such a wonderful session. I think both of you, it was. It went on so well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful session that you've had. But since we are running short of time, so we'll just ask our experts, because we do have some of the panelists. But indeed, all you can see the remarks from the chat, that the session was wonderful and all teachers are highly impressed by it. May I now request Dr. Rosa isn't there. Dr. Helena Altman from Brazil, you're coming here for the first time. So we'd like to a warm welcome to you, and we'll be looking forward to a session from you too. And ma'am, could you just maybe a minute for you so that you could share your message or your remarks, please.
Okay, thank you very much for the nice speeches that we have just heard. It was remarkable for me that both of the speakers talked about sport as a tool, at the same time as a tool of empowerment, as a way to promote sustainable development. And we can see that either in Beatrice's presentation, talking about the indigenous women practicing sports, and also throughout Marianne's presentation, the relations between education and etc. It's interesting to see how competence can be improved in multi-perspective ways throughout sports, and how much we have still to reach promoting equity and equality inside this field. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Helena. Dr. Claudia, please. Dr. Claudia is from Mexico. Ma'am, for your remarks, please.
Hello, I really enjoyed both of the presentations. The first video you present, Beatrice, was so empowering, but this event is also empowering because I really impressed what the content of people there is here, of woman is here. So Usha, you really rocks because you can empower people through this event. So thank you very much. And thank you very much, Beatrice, because you show us through the sport, the history of the struggles that women have to face, not only in the sports, but you show us through the sports, this timeline. So thank you very much, Beatrice. And Marianne, you take a put very important because sports is an important facilitator of sustainable development because sport is increasing and contributed to the ability to develop and peace by promoting tolerance and respect. And that is also support the empowerment of women and young people, individuals and communities, as well as health, education, and social inclusion objectives. So thank you very much to bring us this point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And we now have Dr. Amar Especially, so I know that I'm pronouncing it right, a medical doctor who has rendered a great service, especially with the youth and the adults. Right presently, the state nodal officer of COVID, and also was working with the adults, state nodal officer, adults and health department, health services, government of Kerala since 2012. And sir, a warm welcome to you.
Thank
minute
you.
given to you for your remarks, please, since we are falling short of time.
Thank you, Osha. It was very nice listening to the talk. In fact, the two speakers, esteemed speakers, really touched my heartstrings because I look after the welfare of adolescents in the state of Kerala. That's my tasked job. And the situation here is that we find the teenagers here seem to be losing their self-esteem due to different causes and going after the most not the best choices to get that self-esteem back, like adventurism and high-risk behavior, all those things. So now, on the other hand, we have always admired the role of sports and physical fitness programs in bringing back a feeling of well-being, wellness, and self-esteem. But unfortunately, in our state, I think many of the parents and families do not look up to it as much as they should be doing. And we feel that, as the speakers were saying, we need to glamorize sports, incentivize them, make a coach somebody a respectable person, or a person who is really important for the future of their children and of the next generation. So they should come on par with the mathematics teachers and the physics teachers and the chemistry scholars and all these people, and say that I look after your kids and your young youth's health and physical fitness. So that should be I want to see a day when they also get so much of esteem and respect from the entire society and youngsters in our state. So thank you very much, Usha. I hope we'll all be able to interact again in future.
Sure. Thank you so much, because you're doing a great job with the Adolescent group. And sirs, because I was told there are nearly 20,000 adolescents in the state of Kerala. So
Yeah.
maybe in a day when we plan to have a session for these children, they would have a talk. It's a very important thing because to address adolescent issues. So now we have got a connect, and this connection is going further. Thank you so much, sir. And now we have the president of the passed away, Madam Rosa, for your remarks, please.
Thank you very much to both speakers. I think it's a wonderful presentation combination that explains the whole concept that Marianne tried to indicate related with equity and equality. And just by coincidence, having like the Indigenous group that I think has been one of the most marginalized in the history of society. And of course, with all the elements that Marianne brought it, I think it's so important to awake and to just to think about how we can really be more inclusive and how to get those role models. I totally agree of the importance of people in the grassroots, and the ones that are closer to us sometimes are more meaningful to provoke that change. And I also believe, just one more comment, as we are short of time, in terms of the SDGs. I think sport does impact, and the literature indicates like this 7-1, which is indeed very important. But I also, cannot stop thinking like how sport also can help, like, for example, SDG 7 or SDG 9, when, for example, in communities, like in sustainable community, how sport can be there, or also, for example, how when there is an infrastructure and that energy, and how we can use, like, for example, solar energy. So in order to all be part of this change of mind. And because in the past, with doing all the resources for sport, it wasn't that easy to think about how to make it sustainable. While as more and more examples are coming out, I think we can also push and indicate, yes, sport has also something to say in SDG 7 or 9, for example, on the other ones. So thank you very much for very enlightening presentations, and always, as usual, learning from you all. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Rosa. Indeed, it's nice hearing that we have the president of Tasgi with us, who has made it truly international. I say it's this platform has become international. Dr. Marian Mia, for your message to our PE teachers, because
Yes,
we had nearly 8,000. I think we had nearly 8,000 PE teachers. Can you imagine that?
yeah.
So our women are doing excellent. Girls, I call them girls. So a message from you, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much also for the comments from the colleagues. Thanks. I think it's just very important in terms of, I would like to mention it once again, to be the role model, to be aware that you are role models, not only on the pitch, but all the time. The young people will watch you when you go to the supermarket, how you behave. They will just to be aware, but not to put pressure on you, but to take it as a chance to say you can influence a lot, the way you speak, the way in terms of values, that the way you communicate with each other, also among PE teachers, among the school, with other ethnic groups, with indigenous people, they will see that. And imitate you, or they will notice that more than you think. And I think that this value, and in terms of PE, that we have this physicality, that we can really also kind of make exercise to feel it, to have the body as an instrument, to also experience change in terms of self-esteem, in terms of body language, in terms of saying no or saying yes, or in terms of, I think that's such a chance that you have in your position, and that I encourage you to do your job, that I'm convinced you already do it really, really well, just to do it with even more, how to say, motivation, because it's so important. It's not just PE or sport, which is often after the mathematics and all that, what the colleague Dr. Amar mentioned, but it's much more. It has a real standing, and I would like to just motivate you and encourage you to take that opportunity to make a real change. Thank you.
थैंक यू मैम। ये बता रही थी कि मैम से मैंने मैसेज पूछा था क्या बोलना चाहती है, बोलती कि आप सबको ऐसा एक रोल मॉडल बनना चाहिए, क्योंकि हम लोग परिवर्तन के एजेंट्स हैं। उस तरह से एक बदलाव लाना है जिससे हम सशक्तिकरण कर पाए खेल के द्वारा, और हमें एक ऐसा एग्जाम्पल जो हमारे बच्चों में दिखाने की खेल के जगत के लिए बाहर के हम दिखते हैं, बच्चे हम जैसा बने। इसलिए मैडम ने बोला, मैडम बोलती है आप बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन आप थोड़ा सा उसमें देखेंगे, हम पीई जो है एक काम, नौकरी या काम के तरीके, ये हमारे लिए जिंदगी है। इसलिए मैम को बहुत अच्छा मैसेज। थैंक यू सो मच मैडम, दिस wonderful message put across just by translating it to a bit to our key teachers. Ma'am Beatrice, the great anthropologist, because I envy you, because you've had been to Amazon and then working with the indigenous. You're so lucky. I think all of us keep longing for it. So we can see some videos. Ma'am, for your message to our PE teachers.
Well, I'm very impressed to see the number of people that are the women, I think, that are attending the lecture. It's a village. It's not, it's a big population. You can see it's a complete village. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And I would say that I feel a lot of responsibility to speak for the minorities, not only the indigenous peoples, but the disabled, the immigrants, and the people that they had a very hard time to have voice. And now finally they have some voice, but we need to help them, to try to understand them, to see, you know, what they want, how we can help them to have. And I think sport and physical education is a way that they can find their own way. It's to be get together, to speak about themselves, and to have different models, that you have not only the sport, but to have this forum, social forum, that they can discuss their problems.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Beatrice.
Thank you.
आप सब देख रहे हैं Beatrice मैडम के जो पीछे एक दिख रहा है, that's a crown actually. That's one of the indigenous crown which ma'am has displayed. And ma'am माइनॉरिटी ग्रुप में इंडिजिनस लोगों को किस तरह से उनका आवाज पहुंचाने के काम करती है, बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है मैडम। ब्राजील में अभी यूनाइटेड नेशंस के कॉन्फ्रेंस में भी गई थी, जहाँ पर कह रहे थे भारत के कई अच्छे प्रेजेंटेशंस थे। तो मैडम बिएट्रिस बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है और हमारे भी बहुत अच्छा सहयोग दे रही है। और मैडम बहुत खुश है कि इतना हमारे इतने सारे वुमेन पीई टीचर्स इसमें भाग ले रहे हैं। तो हमें भी जो माइनॉरिटी ग्रुप है, जो उनके लिए भी हमें कुछ करना चाहिए। उनके आवाज हम कैसे ऊपर ला सकते हैं, उनकी आवाज कैसे हम पहुंचा सकते हैं, ये भी बहुत जरूरी है। So thank you so much. We come to the end of the session. So I think indeed we are lucky and blessed because we are two powerful speakers who came and shook. You really shook because you were not in the screens. We could really feel it. That difference wasn't, because Maureen was saying, you know, it's not physical, it's just physicality, or something was beyond it, because you were speaking from heart. You weren't speaking just a lip. That made a difference. So thank you so much. So on behalf of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Government of India, Ministry of Child and Women Development, Director of National College of Physical Education, a big thank you and hats off to Madam Beatrice Ferreira, the great anthropologist. Ma'am, thank you so much for this session and introducing the indigenous. We call here as Adivasi to to our PE community. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'd like to thank Dr. Marian Muir from Switzerland. Again, as I said, ma'am's a fighter. She brings in a voice. A person who's worked with the people in Sri Lanka. Can you imagine of trying to, I would say, like we talk of renovations, trying to revive people's life. So a number of projects you've taken. I think we are blessed to have you because you've done a great humanitarian service. And we indeed blessed to have such a person over here, a person who's not just preaching, but practicing what she preaches and asking others to take up the step. Thank you so much for inducing the energy within us and motivating around 8,000 PE teachers, and all of them being women. As I say, all my girls you have motivated them. They're charged. Thank you so much, madam. Hats off to you. Hats off to Beatrice, ma'am, too. I'd like to thank Dr. Helena, ma'am, because ma'am yes for the first time, but we all look forward to your session, which will be here very soon. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us and gracing us with your valuable presence and your inputs too. I'd like to thank Professor Rosa, who's the president of IPASCAWay, made it truly international. I say you're the Iron Lady, because you are the person who moved and you could bring the whole world for this PE program, and that's you. So the agent for the change is you, and that's women, a real power. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us and making us feel stronger, because once you are there, you feel we're really strong, because you're really missing Darlene too. I'd like to thank Dr. Amar, because even sir's coming for the first time, doing a great job in the Indian community with not only the adolescents, but a number of innovative projects. Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this project. And we look forward to further collaborations too. I'd like to thank, again, I said darling and a star, as Madam Claudia, because early morning, 5 a.m., can you ever imagine anybody coming? As ma'am was there throughout at 5 a.m. in the morning. So I think, I don't think we could get help from anyone else, because you are one among us. So ma'am, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of us, because you and your daughter always make a session very energetic. And your presence does make a difference. Thank you so much, ma'am, for gracing this occasion and giving your valuable inputs. I'd like to thank Dr. T. Kishore, our principal, and the regional director for his constant support. I'd like to thank Mr. Jaipal and Ganesh Harihar, the technical assistants, Dr. Sanjay Patel for being the co-host, and all my dear PE teachers, all my dear girls. I call you as girls because now they've come to, I think in 10 days, they've become younger. They all are girls bubbling with energy. Thank you so much. You're the heart and soul of this program. Thank you so much. But before we wind up, we have the feedback, please. So for both of them together, we have the feedback. Can you kindly put the put in the feedback? It's important for us because we'll be sending the feedback to you too. Both the speakers will be sending you the feedback. So please put in the feedback. So that's great. Thank you. So you may have to go a bit faster for doing it. And I think Dr. Murray and Dr. Beatrice, you can see can you see on the screen? Can you see the screen? Can you see the polling being done?
Can you see?
Dr. Marian, can you see?
Just the template.
You can't see the blue lines they're filling in?
No.
Beatrice, can you see it? No, they can't see it.
No. Well,
Okay.
I guess.
Okay, fine. Anyway, I can see it. I don't know why you're unable to see. So the polling has been done. Nearly 2,000 of them who have completed the polling. And it's excellent where they're given the first, how accurate was the session, how did the session compare to the expectation, how did the next piece? I think there's a repetition of this. Can you go to the next piece?
Down.
Scroll down.
Yes.
Yes. Please, the speaker's knowledge of the topic and the potential skills, it's all excellent. We have nearly 2,500 PE teachers, and along with the precision certificate, we'll also be giving you these feedback. We'll forward you this because this is valuable with the number. And all are, as I said, it's women teachers who are doing the polling. Nearly 2,700 of them who have done the polling so far. So I don't know why you are unable to see it. So there's some panelists can't see it.
They can see.
They can't see it. And now you can't see it. Panelists, can you see it? Can you
No.
see the polling being done?
No, just the template is there, feedback, but it's not moving.
Yeah.
You can see it, but I'm not able to click anywhere.
No, you can't click, but you can. Can you see the blue lines where the participants have answered? It's nearly reaching 3,000.
No.
Yes, participants, teachers, thank you so much. I know it's been excellent, and I think you have seen the chat box. Very informative, excellent session. I don't know what's the problem or why it's not being seen. Why is that the panelists cannot see? What could be the possible reason?
It's no problem. I joined it.
It's okay, fine. Anyway, we'll be sending you the feedback form too. This the completed feedback also would be given to you, and we'll also try if you can send the chat also some of the questions which have come. We'll just definitely send it to you. So I think you can see the chat. It was an excellent session. Everybody are highly appreciative of the session. We have nearly 3,000. It's crossing. Have voted. Have polled for this.
Screen share.
Screen sharing.
Can
Oh,
they
you
see
haven't.
now?
Now can you see it, please? Now can you see it? Panelists, can you see it now? No.
No, I
It's
see.
okay.
No.
They can see.
No, they can't see.
I've shared this.
They can't see the polling.
No, that is a YouTube
It's
live.
too
Fine.
low.
We nearly
with the
have
Google.
3,210 who have done it. So that's, I'm just minimizing, more than 3,000. Let's reach 3,500 because this number is important for us. And for the feedback, you also, it will be good for you when you talk of, and send you the feedback number too. So at least we can have 3,500 concentrators, then we can stop it. But indeed, thank you so much for this last minute. I know for both of you, we had to put in the last minute and put in so much of pressure for you. So indeed, but you did bring about a change, and you are a great influencer. You can influence the entire teachers. How much is reached? Yeah, maybe we can 3,500. So we are just waiting for 3,500. Once they do that, we can stop the polling. It takes some time. So anyway, we'll give the results to you. So once again, thank you so much, and namaste.
Namaste.
Bye. Namaste.
Bye.
Tomorrow
Thank
we
you.
have Branislav session. Branislav is going to come in And Stanislav did try to get the UN UNESCO representative. He said he'll try. I'm not sure. So hope to see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.